Hello, my name is Dr. Paul Simon, psychiatrist. I am a psychiatrist. I finished my residency at Washington University in 2009, and I've been practicing in the area of psychiatry ever since. So I have a lot of clinical experience, and these videos are to kind of share some of my insights without any clear agenda other than just ego, perhaps, or wanting to help more people by getting more information out there. This video is less practical and more just my opinion about asylums and involuntary commitment. Now, please like and subscribe to this channel, and I'll make more videos if you want. Ask a question, and I'll try to answer it. Nothing, clinical or pertaining to you or anybody else specifically, but I'd be happy to share my insights from practical experience about different mental health topics. So back in the day, they used to have large institutes called asylums, and each state had a number of them, one or more, and they were basically large facilities that would try to house and care for people with severe mental health issues. They were supported by the state, very expensive, and there was a lot of good and bad to them. When medications came out that were effective, such as Thorazine, haloperidol, these medications that were effective for severe mental health issues such as schizophrenia. By the way, not everybody with schizophrenia has severe schizophrenia, but if you don't have a medication to treat it, sometimes it can really be a difficult issue, or they can't work sometimes, and it can be a real problem. So back in the day, a lot of people with severe mental health issues, depression, anxiety, anorexia, eating disorders, alcoholism, along with bipolar or schizophrenia, they would have ended up in an asylum or an institution. Now, in the 60s and 70s, when the new medications came out, they thought they were a miracle. And the state thought that they could use those medications coming out as an excuse to cut off the funding for the asylums. And they had the idea that people could be on a medication and live in the community and maybe have some community support through a clinic or supported housing, and everybody would be happy and it would all work out just fine. I think we all know that that didn't turn out so well with the housing crisis. A lot of people that are homeless and on the street have mental issues. Most of homeless people have mental health problems. Not all, perhaps, but the vast majority do, especially if you include drug abuse in that mental health category, which I do. And I think most people do. So when these asylums were very expensive, these medications came out and people thought they were a miracle, it coincided with some exposés on the news of severe abuse that was going on in some institutions. So I think it was Geraldo Rivera, a very famous reporter. He made himself famous by getting into some asylums and seeing people in their severe mental illness. So people lying on the floor, making no sense, and not being well cared for, perhaps, in those institutions that he exposed. So there was a public outcry during the 60s and 70s. There was a big push for the age of Aquarius and all these new theories of being that with the advent of LSD and psychedelics and marijuana, that these people are just misunderstood and people are being closed-minded, and it's okay to believe that aliens are running around, or things such as that. But if somebody can't care for themselves, it doesn't matter what they believe. Do you let them just be on the street and rot or starve or get run over in traffic? Well, I think that's an ethical question that society we need to answer. Most people would say no, but when this exposition, or this was found that these asylums were not all they were cracked up to be, a lot of them. There was this public outcry. And they changed the laws as well as the funding for them, but they changed the laws where you couldn't institutionalize someone as easily. So, for instance, I have a lot of people that I run into whose family or friends or loved ones have come down with a severe mental illness, and they're not able to take care of themselves, and they're a danger to other people, perhaps, or just tearing up a place, and they're running around and doing a bunch of wild stuff, and really affecting the community's quality of life for whatever reason. It used to be that all you had to have was 1 or 2 or 3 physicians to sign them into an asylum, and they would be involuntarily committed for indefinitely. They might have a review once every 6 months, with a panel of nurses and doctors, but essentially they would be put away or locked away indefinitely if they continue to exhibit signs of mental illness that were supposedly interfering with their ability to function in society or take care of themselves. Nowadays, it's much more difficult to get somebody locked away. And if you know anybody who has somebody that has tried to hospitalize somebody, you know how difficult that can be. Now, how it's done nowadays, a person has to be a danger to themselves or others, okay? And it has to be shown to an ER physician, okay, or a nurse practitioner, whoever's working in the emergency room, who's a gatekeeper to the psych ward, okay? So basically, if you can get them to the emergency room, assuming a police or somebody can get the person to the emergency room, you have to first prove to everybody along the way, all those gatekeepers, that the person is in fact a danger to themselves or others. Now that can be interpreted different ways. A lot of frontline personnel, EMS, the police, will say, okay, well, are you suicidal or homicidal? And the person will say, no. And say, okay, goodbye, have a nice day. Whereas if somebody is using drugs and they're dying, essentially, they're on the street, they can't keep a roof over their head, they're essentially killing themselves, but they deny being suicidal or homicidal. A lot of places like California and even Missouri here, or where we are, will not hospitalize the person against their will in those situations. So even though the law may allow you to do so, like in Missouri, you can hospitalize somebody against their will if their substance use issues are a danger to themselves. So if you have an alcoholic who's drinking themselves to death, it doesn't matter whether they're suicidal or not. Technically, the person can be hospitalized against their will. A lot of states have that as well. I don't know all of them, but I know California, I think they got rid of that stipulation that somebody can be hospitalized against their will for substance abuse, and so their homeless population just skyrocketed, at least in part due to that and legalization of substances, so increase the access to substances and reduce the penalties. They don't arrest people anymore for drugs and alcohol use, even in public. So California's walking back a lot of these laws, and Oregon is really trying to walk back a lot of these laws, or these loosening of these laws that occurred, because it's just been mayhem. So we had these asylums. They were state funded, very expensive, and the laws were much more empowering of the clinician, the physician, to hospitalize somebody against their will indefinitely. Nowadays, again, if you can get somebody to the emergency room, the ER docs say, okay, suicidal, not suicidal, yes, no, okay, bye-bye. And even if you can convince the ER physician that the person is needing hospitalization against their will, that gets them to the psych ward, okay? And depending on the state, you can only stay up to 96 hours, holidays and weekends not included. So, and then at that point, the physician who's caring for them has to go to court to apply for depending on the state, 14 days, 21 days. And then at each stage, the physician has to go to court again to maintain that involuntary commitment. So it may, at the most, 90 days. But the problem is, a lot of those asylums, even if you hospitalize somebody or can get them hospitalized that long, those asylums don't exist anymore. So assuming that the physician who's, very overburdened, overworked, they don't have many beds, even if you can get somebody hospitalized for that long and the physician to go along with it, where are you going to put them? Unfortunately, a lot of the people who would need involuntary hospitalization, they're so sick, sometimes chronically, that they don't have any insurance. They haven't signed up for it, and they're in dire need of that. So the hospitals don't get paid for taking them to court and getting them hospitalized and keeping them in the hospital. So the hospital systems aren't supported by the state to hospitalize somebody long term. They're really designed for short-term stabilization, 3 to 5 days for people with good insurance, I think, because you can follow up as an outpatient, you can get a psychiatrist or go to a clinic. So it's a real tragedy, in my opinion, that we don't have better long-term options and that clinicians don't have more leeway to hospitalize somebody who really needs hospitalization, but for whatever reason, they're falling through the cracks. Of course, I'm biased, but I do value freedom and liberty quite a bit. But there's a balance there, and I think when the asylums got shut down and these laws got changed, they went too far to the other side of the spectrum. Whereas before it was the pendulum was all the way over here. The docs had too much power, and there was too much leeway, and not enough liberty there. Now it's the opposite. There's liberty where people can run around on the street and defecate in the grocery store, and if they're not suicidal or homicidal, I'll say, oh, okay, run around and do this kind of things, and maybe get a ticket. And we all know that you're never going to show up at court, and it just continues and causes chaos. So there's got to be some middle ground where we can get the people the help they need, and sometimes even if they don't want it or don't think they need it, or don't have the ability to even make that decision. That's the key. If somebody doesn't have an ability to make a decision, then that's a problem. So anyway, I hope this has been useful to you, interesting to you, and please advocate for more institutions where people who really need it can get the help that they need. Okay? All right. You all take care and have a good one.